Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to another episode of Feed the Beast Revelation. And in between videos, I've been spending a little bit of time experimenting with certain details and certain block choices and whatnot, trying to see what different options we have available to us and how they can kind of change our build styles up a bit. And I think it's coming along okay. I think I'm getting some good ideas. This one in particular, I wanted to get a little closer to the original art style that I was basing it off of, because it felt very, very flat and bland before, and that was kind of unfair to this build style compared to the others. So I've been trying to add in little details and whatnot, the window shapes and little supports and trim pieces and whatnot. I think it looks okay. It's kind of getting there. Obviously, there's a lot of detail missing. Like down here, for example, is really plain, and our doorway still isn't detailed, and this little thing up here doesn't have its roof on it. So there's plenty of detail left to go, but I didn't want to spend tons and tons of time on it just in case we don't end up using it. Still not entirely sold on the windows either, to be honest. The window shape is really cool in the art style, but here in Minecraft, where we have all of these little ridges whenever we try and do round shapes, and also where we have meter-thick walls, so you can't really see in from most angles, I don't know. I don't feel like that works particularly well for our particular case here. So I may switch that out for something a little different. Maybe just thin windows like we have up here. That might look kind of cool. I'll have to try it out. But for the time being, I think this one is kind of coming along okay. I might try and detail it up a little bit more before I really decide what we're doing with it. And this style over here, I didn't change much. I mostly just swapped out the roof to prismarine to try out the oxidized copper roofing style that we talked about before. And I think that looks okay. It would probably look better with different blocks down on the body of the building. Maybe something a bit darker so there's more contrast. Not entirely sure. That's something we may actually experiment with yet today later on. We may actually pop into a creative world and try out different blocks on here to see what they would look like. We'll have to see. I did also add in this little fence thing going on, and I don't really know what the point of that is, but it's something that I see pretty frequently on Victorian-style buildings, so I thought I might try it out and see what it looks like. It's kind of a neat little detail. I don't know that it adds a whole lot to it. I think if they were a little more ornate, as they usually are in real life, then it might look kind of cool, so that's something I may have to experiment a little more with as well, but that's pretty much all I've done as far as messing with the build styles go. And we're actually going to be talking more about these later on today. In fact, I may want to actually utilize all three of these in different ways in our build in this area. So we'll talk about that later on. Probably not going to use this one, by the way. That was kind of a random experiment that, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that one, is all I'm going to say. These three, though, I do think we could make some use of. But I don't want to blab for 10 minutes straight right at the beginning of today's episode, so we'll return to this later on. For right now, let's actually move on to our build project for today. So today is going to be the time where we add our first kind of major build to the area. And it's not actually going to be a building, strangely enough. It's going to be something a little bit different, though it might tie into buildings later on. But what I want to build is something that's going to help us start cleaning up this area, because we've got all kinds of messy stuff out front of our base area right now. We've got these random bushes and farmland and farm animals, which I don't actually know what I'm going to do with, come to think of it. I don't know how we're going to make a farm area with the theme that we're going to have going on. We may need to make a slaughterhouse or something. Not entirely sure just yet. But we have all of this random stuff, and I want to start cleaning it up. And the first thing that we're going to clean up are these water mills right here. So these are the source of our grid power, which is what we use to fly around. It's what powers our angel ring. We're also using it to level up our tinker's tools in a little spot in the basement of our temporary base. So we do need to keep these, but obviously it's really unsightly. Now, I could just bury them. I could put them underground and they would work completely fine, but I'm not really the type of person that likes to do that. I don't like to just hide things away and pretend they don't exist and just reap the benefits from them. I would like something to explain where we're getting this water-based power from. That being the case, I think what I want to do today is make a dam. So we've got this natural river flowing through our biome, and I do want to do several different things with this. I would like to tie into this quite a lot. But in particular, we have this area over here where the river kind of dries up and dies off. And I think what we could do is add a dam in between this area and have the water kind of flow through, make a higher up fake river going out back, and just have the dam go through, and we can kind of harvest our power from that, right? we can make a big build to explain our watermill system, is kind of the general idea here. And obviously the watermills themselves, I probably am going to just kind of hide somewhere nearby, but at least we'll have a build that explains where we're getting that power from. Now, obviously, I could just build a small little dam right here, have the water flow over. That would be completely fine. And in fact, that would probably make the most sense because the river isn't massive. We don't have all that much space behind it to like hold water back or anything. But I kind of want something a little bit more impressive than that. Let's actually go ahead and sleep quick. Don't mind my inventory. So I want something a little bit more impressive than that. I don't want just a small structure that we're never really going to see. Instead, it's going to be something, well, something a little bit more impressive. So I think what we're actually going to end up doing is making a very tall dam. Now, it's going to be a little strange because we don't have much horizontal width to work with. So it's going to be a little cramped, I think, but I'll try and do my best to make this look cool. I want it to be something that is kind of a large, imposing, and really interesting looking structure. And we'll probably add to it more later on. For today, we're probably just going to get like the basic shape and the basic concept for it going. I think I have a pretty cool idea of how I can tie it into our general theme and whatnot. We'll see how it goes. But the first thing I need to do is clean up all of this terrain, probably get rid of some of it and reshape things a bit, maybe expand our river so it connects up to this area, because I think our dam is going to go right here and be very large and imposing. And we'll probably also try and landscape the area behind it a bit and add in, I guess, a proper river, like up higher. I don't know how that's going to go. Obviously, we don't have a ton of space, and making a gigantic dam for this little body of water seems kind of silly. That is something we may address later on down the roads. It's kind of hard to say. For the time being, though, I'm just going to go ahead and create the basic dam shape itself, kind of get all of the systems that are going to go inside of it in place, because it is going to have just a teeny bit of functionality, and, well, we'll go from there.
Then I would cry.
So here is the first pass of our dam. Hello. So here's the first pass of our dam, and I think that looks pretty cool. Maybe a little more industrial feeling than it probably should be, but I like it. I think it's kind of neat. We can always come back in later on and add more details and little things that pop out and give it a more kind of interesting vibe. But for the time being, I think it looks okay. Obviously, the terrain around it isn't really connecting to it very well just yet, and we'll talk about that momentarily. But the basic idea behind the dam is that we've got the water behind it, which I still don't know what I'm going to do with, honestly. I was flying around back here for a little bit, and I think we have two main options when it comes to making this look good. We can either carve into this hill here and expands out this way and make a big pond that the dam is holding back, or we can treat this more like a river and have it flow along the outside of our mountain range, maybe all the way over there or something. That's probably the most logical route, just so we don't see the entire body of water in one go from most angles. I think that would probably make the most sense as like a constant source of water for this. Not entirely sure. You guys will have to let me know. But the water comes from back there. I'm getting sidetracked. The water comes from back there, flows through the dam over here, and then they use it to spin this big gear, at least in our imaginations. And they convert that into power somehow, or they do something with it, right? Something with that mechanical energy. So obviously we want to tie into that somehow. We'll probably expand this blockchain here out a little bit and maybe connect into another set of gears or something. I don't really know how I want to say they're using this energy. I don't know how we can really convey that very well, but I'll try and think of something. That's something we'll probably worry about later on. I do want to probably connect into this wall here. Like, we've got this hillside right now. I would like to turn that into a structure of some kind to tie all of this together. And, like, we've got this big pipe running across. We could tie that into a bit of a structure down here. You get the general idea. So we're going to be tying this in a little bit better in the future. For right now, though, I think it'll do. So that's pretty much what you get, right? We got the water coming over. We've got the big old gear. I may want to do something a little more detailed with this as well in the future. It feels a little basic right now, but we'll see how things go. I'm also not sure about the bottom area. Originally, I had the concrete coming further out and then sloping down, so the water kind of cascaded down into the river, sort of like most dams actually do. It just felt a little weird to have that one part sticking out, so I don't know if I want to do that. It was probably a little more practical to do that, but I don't know. Something I'll have to experiment with. Either way, for the time being, that's going to be the front of our dam. Now, behind it is, well, not very pretty. We have this big old area at the moment, like this big chasm that we covered up for that river, and we'll probably want to do something with this eventually. I'm not entirely sure what. We could hollow it out a little more and make, maybe a power plant that was using the energy of the dam somehow or something. I don't know. We'll have to figure something out, but we have plenty of space to work with. Obviously, the main point of it was to hide our water mills, so those are tucked away down here for the time being. We may find a better spot eventually. And coincidentally, because of how I decided to design this thing, I am actually generating a bit of extra power from it. So up here, in each one of these water channels, there's 2 water wheels from Immersive Engineering, and then there's 4 more inside of the big gear itself. And those, if I can find my way back in here, are actually generating power for us. So, water wheels, hey buddy. So, water wheels actually generate RF based on how many water sources are kind of pushing them along, like in a specific direction. So, I also drag the water back in this way to increase that. I could get a little more power output out of them if I put like a water source block right here, for example, and have that flowing down. That would actually generate us a little bit more power. Currently, it's generating... I can't actually see. I'm surprised this is actually keeping up now. Earlier on, I had to put this energy cell in because the power couldn't even find a spot to go. So, that's interesting. Maybe this power is taking priority now and going in before, like, our tree oil power. Not sure. Either way, we're generating a little over 100 RF a tick in here right now with the current setup. Like 120 or 130 RF, I think. Maybe it's 134. Maybe that's accurate. I don't know. But we're generating a nice little extra bit of power, considering that wasn't really the purpose of this build in the first place. So that's kind of nice. And I think for the time being, that's going to be our dam. Now, as I said, we may return here and try and kind of dress things up a little bit yet. I don't know that we're going to get to all of the structural stuff and tying that in, but we may at least clean up some of the terrain and maybe expand the river out or something. I don't really know. Maybe widen this out would be good, because that looks a little strange. I don't know if we're going to do that today. It would be pretty easy, though, thanks to the EFLNs. If you don't know about these, they are fantastic. I use those to clear out this area. Let me actually show you these, because I did not know about them prior to today, and this is something that needs to be known about. Is this that ravine? Yes. So these guys are amazing. So what this is an EFLN, Explodes Safe for Mining. It's a thing added in by Tinker's Construct. And all it is a flint and either a piece of sulfur or a piece of gunpowder. And it sounds really cheap, and you might think, okay, it's going to be like a teeny tiny little TNT, or maybe a TNT that you can throw because it looks like a ball, which it is, but it's a little bigger than you might expect. Watch this. Yeah. It is insane how large this is. Like, look how much power that has. It's so good. And it doesn't destroy any of the blocks or the ores or anything while you're using it, which is what the safe from mining means. So, really, really cool way of destroying terrain and kind of helping you take out big chunks of it for reshaping. So, we may utilize these a little more today because I think I have quite a few yet. I think I made way more than I needed. And they are quite fun. Anyway, that is for the future. So that's going to be our dam for the time being. Like I said, we may return to it in a little bit. But first, I want to go into a little more detail with our build style stuff. So I'm going to go get a few things prepared and kind of figure out what we're going to do first with this. And I'll be back with you guys in just a second. So here we are in one of my creative worlds, and we can ignore most of this gibberish for the time being. We're really just here for this build in particular. So this is obviously a replica of one of the builds we have in our main build area on our actual world, minus a couple little details, but for the most part, it's the same thing. And I've been using this to experiment with a few different block styles, and in particular, some different block palettes. And I think the results are kind of interesting, and it's something that I wanted to bring up to you guys now, because it's going to play a really big role in the pretty near future. So, to give an example of what I mean, I've swapped out a few different blocks here. I've swapped out the bricks for this blue maho wood from forestry, and the granite and sandstone kind of trim pieces on the building were swapped out for quartz and marble. And it looks kind of interesting, right? I don't think it necessarily is better or worse, it's just different. And that's a big thing, because it means that we have a lot of different options when it comes to this particular build style, and it means that we have a lot of options for how our area might actually end up turning out. So, to give a good example of what I mean, let's actually go ahead and swap out that blue wood for something a little different. Let's say the ipe wood. So this is forestry planks.19. I think I've already got that. Yeah, there we go. So that is what it looks like with ipe wood, which is this huge, completely different shift because it's a different texture. Now, up close, I don't know that this one looks particularly good. I don't think it looks bad, necessarily. From a distance, I actually think it looks really cool because it kind of looks like a dark brick texture. Obviously, the trim should probably be a darker color as well, because right now it's super contrasty. But that is an interesting option for a wall texture. And it, again, completely changes the vibe that the building might have, as does swapping it out for this dark oak planks texture from Chisel Mod. So Chisel Planks Dark Oak, I think, just like a so. Now this texture, again, super duper contrasty because we're leaving these white textures, because unfortunately replacing all these stairs and stuff is a little more cumbersome. But if that was all a darker texture, this build would have a much more dark, kind of almost a gloomy feeling to it. It's very, very dark compared to all of the other ones we've looked at, especially like the bricks and the blue wood. And that just changes the entire dynamic of the build quite a lot, especially if the entire city is built of colors like this. Now, do keep in mind, just because we go with one particular one or we think one looks good doesn't mean that's the only one we can use. In all honesty, we could use all of them and it would probably be fine. But I don't know that we would want this giant rainbow of color around our build either. So that's why I bring this up to you guys now. I want to know what you guys think we should try out as far as block palettes go for this build in particular. And at some point within the next few episodes, I will take the time to take all of these suggestions and all of the other ideas that I have myself, like this one, for example, and make actual proper block palettes for them. Like, you know, this one should have proper dark trim and all of that good stuff. Go through and do all of that, make an array of these houses, so we have a big row of them. And at some point in the next few episodes, we'll go through and kind of pick out the ones we really like and try and figure out what ones we think look best. And that's going to be important because we are really reaching that point where we need to start building structures in our world. Now, that's going to be a little interesting. Again, we don't necessarily only need to have one. And of course, we do have other build styles as well, like these two styles here, which again, if you have suggestions for different block styles we can use here, different colors that we could use for them, be sure to let me know, and I'll be happy to try them out and see what they look like. In fact, we're actually probably going to be using all three of these in some capacity. And, well, let's actually go back to our main world to discuss that. So, as I've mentioned a couple times today, I think the solution for deciding which build style we're actually going to go with in our area here, because that has been a problem for quite a while now in this series, deciding what build style we're going to go with, I think the solution to that is actually to use multiple build styles. In fact, maybe even all three of these. Now, as I've actually been working on these build styles gradually throughout the episodes, a few of you have come to me with this suggestion in a variety of different ways. But the basic idea was always the same. Why not use different build styles to convey different things, or just use different build styles in different areas? For example, this build style back here feels kind of regal, kind of high class. So that could be in a higher class area, and for example, represent things that are generally seen as slightly higher class. So stuff like our magical areas, stuff like Botania or, maybe astral sorcery or whatever could take place in a building like this one, because it feels a little more high-end, right? Whereas this build style is inherently a little bit less impressive. It's just a little bit more rundown, a little bit more kind of gritty. In fact, the the original artwork for it was actually a little bit run down. It wasn't a perfectly clean structure. So the idea of having this in, say, our more industrial area, for example, and making that area a little more condensed, a little more crammed together, a little more crowded, I think that might actually feel really, really cool, where we have one area that feels a little more gritty, and then eventually, you walk over a hill and through the woods or whatever, and you end up in an area full of buildings like this one that have a little more space to them. They have things a little more organized. They'll still have that slightly gritty aspect to them. That's an aspect that's going to carry on throughout everything because we've got kind of a steampunk theme that we want to do. But they'll still feel like they're a little bit higher class than the areas that have these buildings. And of course, we could even work this style in if we need a large building for something like, let's say astral sorcery. Let's say we want a big telescope going out of the tower on one side, and off the other side, we've got a big platform with other spacey stuff going on, So obviously we can work with different build styles in this, and I think that can work out relatively well. I think that we can do that without kind of losing much. I think we can do that without having this huge conflict, which is what I wanted to avoid. I didn't want a big clash of styles, but I think if we work them in a very specific way, we'll take a little nap. I think if we work them in a specific way, it could work out relatively well. So I do like that idea quite a lot. Hopefully you guys do as well. Be sure to tell me what you think on that, and if you have any suggestions for things we should try and do in that regard. And on that note, I think I'm going to have to call it here for today, unfortunately. I know we didn't get a whole lot done today, mostly just this little dam here, and most of the video was just me rambling. But, well, it was important rambling. We got a lot of stuff talked about, and hopefully that will lead to a lot of productivity next time. Still trying to kind of work my way back into the whole YouTube thing. It's been really hard to record for the last few weeks for some reason, to the point where I even missed an entire week of videos, so apologies for that. Hopefully that's not going to happen again. I'm kind of forcing myself back on schedule and easing myself back into it. Kind of hard, though. It's really weird how difficult it gets when you don't do it for a few days. Anyway, I'm back to it now. We should be good to go, and hopefully in the next few episodes we will be finally starting our actual builds, or at the very least we'll be figuring out the specifics of our build styles and maybe trying out different material choices, especially if you guys have cool suggestions for that for me. So, we're going to be trying all of that out probably in, I'll say, 3 episodes, because I think the next 2 I have a few other things planned that I want to try out. But for right now, I'm going to have to call it here. So, that being said, thank you guys for watching. Apologies for the missed episode and the rambliness. I think we'll be back on track next time. But for today, I'm going to call it here. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.